Hello, people, and welcome back to another episode of the Fair One podcast, Fab's podcast, really. Guys, Happy New Year and all of that. Let's get straight into it. I will go over some of the stats and everything that we have. Sam will not be joining us. He has much more important things to do, like being a corporate vampire and running the world. So, yes, Happy New Year and whatnot. We are going to talk predominantly about the Strickland fight versus DDP, so we'll see how that goes. Jordan Martinez asks, will Strickland versus DDP look like the Cannonier fight in which power mattered more than volume? I think it will look like that a little bit, but I think that Cannonier is much more methodical than DDP, whereas DDP, and that's not to say he's better, that's just to say he's more methodical. And DDP is a little bit more chaotic and he has a little bit more of an X factor about him, and he does have the power. But I do think that in the way that he fights, whilst it is erratic, while it is chaotic and it works to his benefit, I think as the fight progresses, if the fight gets past that second or third round, which I think that's where DDP is going to be the most dangerous, if it gets past that second round, it's going to be hard for DDP to be able to put that kind of game on Strickland. I think Strickland is going to be able to put a pace on him in those later rounds, third, fourth, and fifth. He's very, very good at doing that. One of the problems is, though, that if Strickland can't walk him down, which is going to be hard to do with DDP, it's not going to be it's not going to be all his way in this fight. So I also think that he's learned a lot from that Cannonier fight in particular. And so I think it's going to be interesting. Kenzo Tenma says, it seemed like Du Plessis' comments on Strickland's dad in the press conference rattled Sean. Do you agree with this? Yeah, but it doesn't matter if it did or if it didn't. Like, come fight time, I don't think that's going to be the issue. You know what I mean? Like, people talk about all of that. You think that that'd be the only time in a fighter's career, and by the time he's 31, that he may or may not have been rattled. It's not going to matter too much. Max Jamil says, how far do you think DDP's weird striking can take him? It reminds me of prime Tony Ferguson, in which you will be able to do things from weird angles. I think it'll take him far, but I mean, it has taken him far, hasn't it? He's fighting for the UFC middleweight belt. It's going to be interesting to see, because I don't know how he's going to do now with people in their prime coming through, you know what I mean? Because I do think that there is an asterisk next to some of those names. Not DDP's fault, but I do think that Brunson was a little bit past it. You know, some of these guys haven't been winning fights, you know, Darren Till, for instance. So it's going to be interesting. Like, I mean, he did beat Rob well, and that was, you know, you can't take that away from him at all, you know. So let's see how often, how much he can do that. Jordan Martinez says, will it take a meat and potatoes type of striker to deal with DDP's wildness? I think so. I think there's going to definitely be an element of that. And I do think that Strickland has really good basics, really good fundamentals, lacks a little bit of power, doesn't hit as hard as you'd like him to, but it's not like if he hits you, he doesn't hurt you. You know what I mean? Like, the way he dropped Israel, he full spun Israel around. It's credit to Israel's durability. And he stopped Brendan Allen. He and Chris Curtis stopped Brendan Allen. Not a lot of people have done that, so that victory has aged quite well. Max Jamil says, thoughts on DDP wanting to fight at light heavyweight after a win against Strickland? I mean, sure. You know what I mean? Cooper Marion says, long time no see, Fab. Hope you're doing well. Thank you, sir. I'm just going to go over a few. And Cooper says he's been sick since Thursday. Man, I hope you get feeling better. I just read the other comment you say. Did you see Sean saying he'd stab Drickus if he talked about his dad again? No, I did not see him saying that. I do think that, like to me, I think families and that kind of stuff should be off limits, and it should be off limits at a different level, like even from the organization itself. But that's me. Let's talk a little bit about the fight. Let me see. I'm gonna have a proper shot at this. Let's see if I can do this, guys. Without look at that. And they doubted me. People doubted me. All right. Okay. Give me 1 second, guys. So here we have slide 1, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about it. On slide 1, so I'll just talk a little bit about these things that we have on slide 1. Strickland has 20 UFC fights compared to DDP 6. So there's a lot more data to collate for Strickland. Strickland on average lands 28 significant strikes per round, slightly lower than DDP's 29.5. But having said that, Strickland's fought a lot more 5-round fights. While they both mostly land strikes to the head, Strickland does land 23 per round, 3 more on average than DDP's 20. That's sitting behind a very jab-heavy game from Strickland. They each land similar numbers of strikes to the body per round, with DDP landing almost 4 times as many leg strikes than Strickland. Strikes landed from distance favors Strickland, landing 25 compared to DDP's 20 per round. The ground strikes and strikes from the clinch favor DDP, where he lands an average 3 times as many per round. The striking accuracy favors DDP, where he lands 56% of significant strikes compared to Strickland's 42%. DDP lands head strikes with 49% accuracy. Some of the stuff that I was just going to talk about a little bit with this is, because we're looking at fights where Strickland mainly goes 5 rounds, I think the body shots are going to be very, very telling in the fight. If Strickland can win the first round, I think it's going to be very, very, very hard for DDP to come back from that. It's one of the things I'd said before the fight, and you can check it as well with Israel and him. I didn't think he was going to grapple Israel. I thought that if he did manage to win that first round, that would make a big difference in the fight, because I didn't see Israel being able to come back and win, like, say, for example, the 4th and the 5th. DDP lands head strikes with 49% accuracy compared to Strickland's 38%, which is very, very interesting, considering that I would say that DDP has a fair bit more power. Strickland does have higher takedown accuracy at 64% compared to DDP's 50%, but DDP does land almost 3 times more takedowns per round on average. So DDP is shooting more takedowns and he lands more takedowns, but Strickland is more efficient with a higher accuracy. So these are very interesting points. I do think that the way that this will get done is this is how I see it. The way that it will get done is Strickland later in the fight, or DDP early. That's how I would call this fight. Moving right along, guys, to the next slide. DDP has only had 2 of his fights go to the 3rd round in the UFC, and only 1 of those went to a decision. That was against, I believe, Tavares, and they bashed each other in that fight. Having said that, Tavares is very tough and very good, but I think he's a little bit slower. Round by round, in round 1, Strickland lands more head strikes on average, with DDP landing more significant strikes overall and more strikes to the leg and body. 83% of Strickland's significant strikes land from distance, while half of DDP's are from the clinch or from the ground. This slightly changes for DDP in round 2, as he lands more strikes to the head, and most of them from a distance. DDP has only been to the 3rd round twice, but he increases his rate of landing to 38 significant strikes. He lands 26 of these strikes to the head, and most of them are from distance, with only a few strikes from the clinch or the ground. Strickland's first 3 rounds follow a similar profile, but we also have more fights to extract data from, so there is less chance of large variances, which I honestly think is a massive, massive point, because I don't see too many other fighters being able to control the volume and pour the volume on the way that Strickland can. So that's very, very interesting. This is the data. Give me 1 second, guys. Just want to double check something. Yeah. So this is the data for Adesanya versus Strickland fight. Strickland landed 53% of his significant strikes, totaling 137 strikes landed. Adesanya landed only 94 significant strikes at a rate of only 35%. This really demonstrates the defense of Strickland and how hard he is to hit. He looks like he's easy to hit. He looks like he should be easy to hit, but he's not. Adesanya threw 12 more strikes than Strickland, but landed 43 fewer strikes overall. For the entire fight, Adesanya only landed 22 head strikes, where Strickland landed almost 4 times as many with 85. That's also, like I said, behind a very good jab, and he got in that boxing range of Adesanya. And before people throw Adesanya around, like, you know, like, no, he looks stiff. He looks, man, Adesanya's still Adesanya, dude, and he's like, I think the best middleweight to ever do it. But this is what he did to him, you know what I mean? And so I do think that is going to be a difficult thing to deal with. That power and the accuracy and the sound defense is difficult to deal with. Strickland also landed more strikes to the body with 45, with Adesanya only landing 38. Adesanya did land almost 5 times as many leg strikes as Strickland with 34 for the entire fight. The control time that was attributed to Strickland only totaled 14 seconds and was just in those moments of the first round. Again, very, very interesting in that regard. I see the leg kicks being a factor to some degree. I see the leg kicks being a factor to some degree, but I don't see Dricus being able to capitalize enough on them over the 5 rounds. Like I said, I do believe DDP can get it done, and I do believe he can get it done by TKO early. But if it goes further than that, I do think it's going to be hard to put up with the volume that Strickland can pour on. Like for the first 3 rounds, Strickland has a similar output profile with 55 to 60 attempted head strikes. Then he increases the work rate in the 4th and 5th rounds. DDP, on the other hand, increases his work rate dramatically from round to round, attempting 31 head strikes in the first round and 44 in the second and 57 in the third. But we haven't seen him over 5 rounds, which is a big difference. Big difference. And it depends who you're fighting as well. So these are big things. Let me go to the next slide. For the first 3 rounds, sorry guys, let me just skip this. Okay. The round-by-round accuracy favors DDP with 50% accuracy in head strikes for the first few rounds compared to Strickland's 35 to 40% accuracy. Strickland does increase his head strike accuracy each round, whereas DDP seems to drop in accuracy in the 3rd round. While this does indicate DDP getting less accurate in the 3rd round, he only has had 2 fights in the UFC that have made it to the 3rd round. So that's very, very important. When I look at all these things, I do believe, like I said, I do think that that's a fair call, that if it gets past that 6, 7, 8 minutes, that it'll start to go towards it'll start to go Sean Strickland's way. I think that's a very difficult puzzle to solve as a fight progresses. And I think with even with the Cannonier fight, like it was a very close fight. Like it wasn't like a fight that you can say to me, oh, Cannonier just pumped him. No, he didn't do that. It wasn't like that. It was a close fight. It was a very close fight. And I thought when I was watching it, I thought Strickland won, but it was like a close fight. I didn't disagree with the decision. I just thought, oh, Strickland won. I didn't disagree with it though. But yeah, I think it's a very, very difficult puzzle to solve later in the fight. King Carrot says, I would like to see Dricus fight Marvin. I just don't see, this is my opinion with Marvin, I don't see anything that Marvin's going to throw back at Dricus that's going to, like, Marvin doesn't have massive power in his hands. He's got a fantastic chin and he's got good grappling and he's tidy, but I see Dricus being able to hit him a lot. Marvin gets hit. He can take a shot like no one else, but I don't see Marvin beating Dricus, no. And Dricus is a lot faster than Marvin. Cooper Marion says, how would you see Dricus matching up with Alex if he gets past Sean? I don't think that Dricus is tidy enough to deal with Alex's striking, because at some point Alex is going to touch him and he's going to drop him, and he's going to drop him bad. And Dricus has been knocked out before by Roberto Soldic, and like Alex is going to hit you at some point, and Dricus still gets hit, man. Like, his fights are not tidy. And that's why I do see it being a problem down the stretch against see that being a big problem down the stretch against what's his name? Against Sean Strickland. I see that being a problem. He does get hit. He's not that tidy. He when he fought Robbie, did a good job of having a high guard. I don't think that for whatever reason, and I'm not criticizing anyone, but I'm not going to go into it actually. But yeah, he did put a high guard up against Rob, and it worked. But I think that Sean is going to be, Sean's not going to blitz you and slow down. He's going to just methodically keep doing his thing. He's going to keep jabbing you and throwing kicks, and he's good. He's a good enough grappler that I think Dricus might hold him on the ground for a little bit if he gets him down. But all of that, it takes energy from you if you're the guy grappling. So I think that Sean, it's going to be very hard to out cardio Sean. And he's not that tidy, dude. That's so when you're asking about Alex versus Sean, Alex versus Dricus, Dricus could beat him. Of course, he could beat him by getting him on the ground and whatnot, or catching him with something. Of course, he could beat him. But if you want me to, I would say Alex is going to hit him at some point with something, and Alex hits too hard. Sufi Me, thank you very much, Sufi Me, you champion bloke. Thank you so much. For the $5, I believe that's Canadian. I feel like DDP's forward pressure mixed with decent wrestling and funky striking will give Sean issue. Absolutely. Sean likes to fight at a particular pace. Sufi Me, you are 100% spot on. I definitely do think that is true. Like, that is absolutely true. Like, it is going to create problems for Sean. No doubt about it. But he could take Sean out, but I think for him to take Sean out, it has to be done in those first maybe 2.5 rounds. After that, it's going to be very hard to keep doing that against the guy as tidy and as methodical with as good a cardio as Sean. Cooper Marion says, at Sufi, I agree. I feel like DDP's ability to switch up the timing and pace is going to lead to Sean getting caught or just thrown off. Yes, but that's going to be predominantly early in the fight. It's harder to keep that kind of erratic style later in the fight. It's very hard. The later the fight goes, the more it favors the person that can fight at a certain pace in a methodical manner that's tactical, so that's going to favor Sean. Early on in the fight, in the chaos, it's going to favor the erotic kind of unorthodox, powerful guy, and that's DDP. Coma says, the Excel boys are back. We are back, sir. Sufi Me at Cooper Marion, and Oliver Ekman says, I think Marvin's going to beat Dricus. How are you, Fab? I'm good, Oliver. How are you? I don't see Marvin beating Dricus. I don't see Marvin really beating anyone that can move and hit and has good takedown defense. I really don't see him beating anyone like that. I'd see him struggling very, very much against anyone that can stop a takedown and can move a little bit, like that can move, and DDP can do that. So I don't see Marvin being able to do that. It's hard. It's hard to impose the game that Marvin wants to play when you don't have power behind what you do. So this is how I see that fight going. So that's my thoughts on the Strickland versus DDP. One second. Sufi Me says, Luke Thomas described Marvin perfectly. Marvin is a well-rounded fighter, but he doesn't excel anywhere. I think it's not really that simple. I think Marvin is about as good as he's going to be. I think he's someone that kind of like even exceeded his potential, but he just does not have pop. He doesn't have pop in his punches. He's not a particularly fast guy. I think he's excelled as far as he's going to excel in any sort of facet, of striking or whatever. But he's just doesn't have that. He doesn't have pop, man. And that's something that you can't. If he didn't have the chin that he has, he wouldn't be anywhere near the top 10. There's no way in the world. He's got a big heart. He tries real hard. You can tell he trains really hard. Does all the things he has to do, but he just doesn't have pop. And he's not going to beat any of those top guys without it. You need to be able to hit people so that, they respect you. They respect that, the strikes that are coming back. Sufi Mi says, Marvin screams are majestic, though, not going to lie. Oliver Ekman says, I was joking about the Marvin thing, but I still love you, Fab. All right. Thank you, mate. Right back at you, sir. Yeah, no, it's I don't think Marvin is I don't think Marvin's going to be holding that space that he's holding for much longer in that division, and I think there's a big changing of the guard in that division. I think a good guy to look at, but he just doesn't have quite the amount of power, is Imavov in that division. He doesn't just have that one shot power, but he does hit pretty crisp. The last fight he had with Curtis when he was landing some good shots. I think when he comes into his own, he's gonna do very, very well in that division. There's a lot of good guys, man. Aliskerov is there. There's some good guys. Obviously, Hamzat. If Usman hangs around a little bit longer in that division, he'll give some interesting fights there. I'm talking outside of the guys that everyone already knows in that division. Now, the fight that was interesting, I think, recently was that Bruno Ferrer fight on the weekend against Phil Hawes. Bruno, he knocked Phil out. Now, Phil's very skilled. He just doesn't seem to have the chin for it. If you gave Phil Marvin's chin, he'd be champion. But Bruno didn't just hit him once and knock him out. Like, he showed some really good grappling, some really good wrestling. Phil Hawes is a high-level wrestler. He's a JUCO national champion. Like, he's a good wrestler. And Bruno threw him around, dude. Like, he threw him around a bit. So that was very, very interesting. I think he's going to give a lot of guys fits in that division. There's a few good. There's the guy that beat, what's his first name? Nurslowan, the guy from Uzbekistan that beat Ferrer. He's going to give a lot of people problems. There's a lot of good fighters in that division now that are coming through. Obviously, Bo Nickel. There's a few guys, man. So this is going to be interesting. Yeah, the Allen fight's going to be a good one. That's an interesting fight as well. I haven't done any proper background on that to give a proper pick. So my picks for this fight are DDP gets it done early, or Strickland gets it done over the 5 rounds, whether he stops him late or he wins a decision. But if it goes the distance, I think Strickland will probably get it done. They are my thoughts, people. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell, guys. And please, guys, join me on the weekend to watch the fight. Thank you so much. Take care.